What's going on, guys? Welcome to today's episode of the Collecting Keys Real Estate Investing Podcast. Today is a catch-up episode for Dan and I because I have been MIA for the past couple of weeks. But if this is your first time with us, this is the Wednesday Mike and Dan show where I, Mike DeHaan, and my co-host here, Dan Austin, talk about real estate investing, business, and everything in between. So cool. Well, I appreciate you holding down the ship while I was traveling the past couple of weeks.
Yeah.
If you guys follow me on Instagram at Mike_invest, you might have seen my posts a little bit. I was over in Portugal for a couple of weeks here, just checking out, what actually might be, honestly, one of my favorite European countries that I've been to. It's probably the first country I've been to that I legitimately think that I could spend a very significant amount of time and not get sick of it. Because like a lot of other ones, the novelties kind of wear off, but it's just a super cool place in general.
Strong real estate market too.
But they do. So that's actually is an interesting point of conversation with it is, as I was there, when you're in the real estate business, that's always something that you just think about, right?
Sure.
And you real estate in Europe isn't as massive of a thing as it is in the States. Home ownership, property ownership is something that's a little bit less common, especially in some of the countries that are, I would say, on the lower end of the economic spectrum, which, Portugal is a country that I didn't realize until I went there that was under a dictatorship until the 70s. And then, they sort of got out of that with a revolution where they didn't even kill anybody. Basically everyone was just what, fuck this. And they just stopped doing the dictatorship. And then, but from there, they had a lot of struggles. And 2008 happened and it kind of ruined everything. But now it's finally starting to come out of it. So you're starting to see real estate things, opportunities present themselves. But it was interesting because one of the big things that I noticed there was how heavily they're pushing for outside investment. So as I would go around, I would walk past a couple of real estate offices, especially in some of the beach towns we were in, and you would see a lot of listings and they would very explicitly say that this meets the requirement for Portugal's golden visa, which is basically this perk that they have that if you bring a certain amount of money and you invest there, they will basically make you an honorary citizen and give you all of the perks, right? That will expedite it versus having to go through the actual citizenship process. And then there would always be things talking about the rent potential, the Airbnb potential, the upside of the neighborhoods, things like that. That was what led most of the listings as opposed to, desirable school district or the kind of things that you see in the States.
Yeah, I've heard
I think it's just because people there
I've heard
generally
quite
can't afford
a few
stuff.
people investing over there these days and actually moving and living there. And when I say quite a few, probably half a dozen in the last year of people I've talked to that have lived there a long time or have made investments over there just because it seems like it's worth diversifying a little bit and having a cool landing spot.
It makes absolutely. It's a beautiful area. It's easy to get to. It's unbelievably cheap especially for being Europe, which is usually kind of expensive. Dude, we went to some of these restaurants. There was one night in particular we were in this kind of small local town, and it was a Portuguese tapas style. And tapas traditionally Spanish, do the same thing in Portugal. And we ordered almost everything on the menu. It was me and these two other guys, and we had a bottle of wine, and we had 2 desserts. It was 12 things of food, that are all shareable plates. Our total bill was 100 euros.
That's not bad at all.
Which is 120 bucks for so much just bomb food. I was if we did this in the States, it'd be 500 bucks.
$150 for breakfast in San Diego last week.
Exactly.
And it was eggs and bacon.
Yeah. So this is fresh caught octopus, all kinds of fish, everything. It was awesome. Plus the bottle of wine was, I think, 3 euros for a super
Carlos
good bottle
Rossi.
of wine.
Or was it Franzia?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Franzia. Yeah, they came in a box and they bring it out on a little cart. And they don't even give you a glass. You have to put your mouth under it and twist the thing.
I bet you probably don't even see that there.
No, not really.
Stores.
Yeah, not really. That's always a thing in Europe in general is alcohol culture is just so different and it's so cheap.
Yeah.
There was one night when we were in Porto and we were going to watch the sunset over the main area, which is the big thing to do there. And I went and got 2 bottles of sangria from the store for 2 euros each.
It's good stuff. It's like Mad Dog, basically, right?
Pretty much. Yeah, and, just whenever I spend time overseas like that, I always just just like spending time, especially in areas where you're kind of off the beaten path a little bit and you're around a lot of locals, it always just makes me realize how much so many Americans need to travel, especially with like how often everybody here just complains about everything.
Right.
And then you go places that are just like simpler, right, in nature.
Yeah, it's like,
and it kind of makes you reflect of like, why do people exactly like why do people complain about 99% of the stuff that we have going on here when like, you know, in like legit like decent countries, people have like actual problems. It's not like you need to go to like Afghanistan to find people with actual problems.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
I think too, like,
I mean, like,
even for just a lot of people, like just move out of your town and like go around the country and see other stuff too. Like there's like, but I think just to speak to your point, like the vast majority of people are super limited in leaving. And it's expensive, and I get why a lot of people in America can't do it, but like just leaving your own town that you live in more than once a week to go to, you know, Mexico, or once a year to go to Mexico for a week, you know?
Yeah.
Like get out and like travel, see things, get a little bit of variety, you know, meet new people.
You know what the crazy thing is though? Like it honestly isn't that expensive. Like so our trip that we just did around well, yeah, but like when you compare it to traveling in the United States, it is 1-to-1 similar.
Right.
And honestly, depending on where you go overseas, it's actually cheaper a lot of the time. So like our flights over to Portugal were cheaper than when I went down to LA for my grandma's funeral. In March.
I agree. I don't think that international travel is cost prohibitive. I just think travel in general for many people, the way in America they prioritize their I guess their dollar, like how much, where they spend their money, that people just don't do it because of that cost prohibition.
I think the time, it's the time component is so huge too, because we don't have a lot of, you know, PTO here for a lot of people. And so people have to choose between going home for Christmas or, you know, traveling for their kids' spring break to freaking, I don't know, Cabo or whatever, or going overseas, which you do need more time to do. Yeah, right. Which you do need more time to go overseas because you have the travel time, which is longer, and you're also just completely fucked for the first like couple days because of jet lag.
Yeah, that does suck.
But yeah. Either way, I don't know if there's if you have the means to do so, and if you're listening to this, most people probably do, right?
Or you will.
Or you could like save up for it. Yeah, for sure. I do think it is a good like eye-opening thing to just like get out of the U.S. and just go see like anything.
Yeah, travel is such a good thing. That's like one of like the, I feel like, pillars for like I look at as a parent and like things you can provide to your children, and that is just like unique worldly perspectives. And to do that, you can I guess watch the National Geographic channel, but I don't think that counts as learning new cultures. So I think that's vastly important compared to anything you can teach your children to, is to understand and be understanding of other cultures, see them, experience them, and then you can actually like make really educated decisions as an adult of what you would want to be and do in life.
Exactly. And, you know, in a time when I just feel like all of our media, and I see this stuff, you know, even like GoBundance and things like that recently, where people are like, I feel like the world just feels so heavy right now. There's like a lot of stuff going on. You go over a lot of places. I know I went to several countries over the past couple weeks. It doesn't feel that way there. People are just like legitimately more chill about stuff, right? And just like the lifestyle is completely different. And it's not because they're over there fucking around. They just have like different views in life. Like they just are like not as worried about, I don't know, the political stuff that we have here. You just don't necessarily see that over there. But the funny thing is they still have those problems. It just doesn't consume their culture like it does here for some reason.
Exactly.
So anyways, but yeah, man, I appreciate you holding down the ship a little bit. I was gone. I was able to hop on a couple calls. And I know we had some ups and downs, and we actually had a pretty challenging first week. I don't say challenging. I think it went well. Interesting first week because you were traveling too. So I think that was one of the first weeks that we've had since we've started this business in general where we've both been gone.
Yeah.
And then you were able to kind of like do some analysis and pick up some of the stuff for that second week. So I guess what are some of your takeaways for people that want to be able to build a business that allows you to step away a little bit? What were some of the things that you picked up? Where have we hit it on the nose? Where have we missed?
Well, I guess I would say the two things that I think about most is like being able to delegate and then also trusting your staff to do the work, but then you as a person being able to delegate and let it go, which also means you need to trust your staff to do it. And you also need to be okay when things miss, because inevitably, you know, there's always kind of these last minute things that you don't realize that you are controlling or you have to like be part of to make it happen. And so then being okay with a miss on that when you step away and just kind of throw it over the fence and don't get upset if it doesn't get done properly, because it's really on you for not actually fully delegating that process or fully being outside of that process. And there's just a ton of stuff. I think the best part about not being around is you realize what you are still needed for. Yeah. And so being able to step away at some like interval, I think is really good. Like step away and like and recognize that there's going to be some emergencies and fires that have to be put out, and those are probably the first places you should work on when you get back, to actually delegate or to add systems, like more systems, or make your systems more robust around those areas.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think things that get overlooked when you are always present is like the small stuff, right? Because you said that to me. It's like it was very apparent, like the small knowledge gaps in certain things that apparently only I have. Which, when you said that in that message to me, I couldn't even think about what that would have been, because I feel like at this point I've given everybody everything.
Yep.
So,
yeah, and I think there's just like little things that everybody builds up over time, and you're right, you don't know until something like doesn't work, and you're like, I wonder why that didn't work. It's like, oh well, I guess, or I guess too, if you're getting messaged about stuff and getting questioned about things, that's probably a knowledge gap in the team, or a perceived knowledge gap, but more or less a responsibility gap in understanding what part of the decision-making process has been delegated. Because sometimes your staff might have 100% capability in your mind to do something, but in their mind, they need you to make the decision. When really you're like, I'm okay with you making the decision. And as they get the opportunity to make enough of those decisions, then they're able to kind of figure out what the boundaries are of that decision making, and learn what kind of decisions you would make, or learn that, you know, you're okay with decisions that you don't make not being perfect.
Yeah. And that's a big thing too, is when like giving people that confidence, but also I guess the thing that I discovered in the first couple of days was it's not even always necessarily a knowledge gap, but more just like a communication gap, where people don't necessarily know who holds the knowledge that they're looking for, because they've always just sort of come to me or to you for stuff. And then we'll just reply a quick answer, when really and it's funny, all of a sudden, like the concept of like an org chart just like makes sense to me.
Yeah. Well,
when it's like, if we were able to like more specifically lay that out and what everyone's roles and responsibilities are, which we do for each individual, but that's never been like made aware to the whole company.
Right. And as you're transitioning, to the tough thing is too, when you're transitioning additional responsibilities to staff, people, you know, all that sort of stuff, there's always this inevitable growth issue. And like, it's a double-edged sword, because as a leader or an owner of your company, you should be the glue that holds the organization together. But the problem is, if that glue is absolutely imperative to people being able to find knowledge or to get things, like you're the connector, that's a problem. Because ultimately, if you started your business and you run your business, like, you know every little crack of the business, like, you know every little corner and creak of everything. And it's impossible for new hires to know that sort of stuff. But as a result, you end up becoming that kind of like glue that finds the knowledge or connects people. And if you can still be the glue organizationally and culturally, but then allow your staff to figure out how to connect to the right people, that's like the ultimate goal, right? Because then you're no longer relied upon to say, well, what should I do here? Or who do I talk to? Or where is this? It's just like simple little things like that build up. Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's just the compounding issues. And that's where I feel like a lot of people's business tend to explode, right? Or implode, whatever direction it goes. Because those little things will start to just stack up over and over and over again. And all of a sudden, it just teeters over the cliff. Yeah, I would say, though, overall, it's been good. Our team did a really good job when we were both gone. And then last week when you were gone, I think everybody stepped up in general, and really made a big dent in things that we were currently working on before we're traveling, but also just kind of knew in general what to do, knew in general the next steps. And so, I think overall it's good, my analysis. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's good. And because, I mean, it wasn't like it was an easy couple weeks either. We had some challenges with some closings. We had some major challenges with a couple of partners that are part of our partnership program, who, like, honestly, out of the woodwork suddenly became like major issues that we've had to deal with.
Yep.
And we were able to sort of like get the ball rolling, and I'll be dealing with those this week. But you know, it's just, I think that's why it's also important to just make sure that your general processes and your vision is kind of outlined, so that when there are sort of, I guess, hurdles that are thrown in, the team at least knows how to jump for them.
Totally.
Right? But yeah, and then also too, I'll say as like a owner or like a CEO, it's valuable thing about like doing travel like this while your business is operating, and being able to sort of trust in the process to run is, for me, it was very valuable to be able to spend a lot of time like just thinking without having to like be worried about the constant daily noise, which is so difficult when you're kind of just in the treadmill. And even though everyone says you need to work on your business, not in your business, it's hard to do when like your business is right there and you're kind of always working in it, right? But like having that, I guess, air gap, right, of, you know, me being overseas, because like even if I had availability, I couldn't really do a lot because I was 9 hours ahead. You know, so like my day-to-day availability was just different. But it gave me a lot of time to just sort of think and do some new planning. And it was, you know, it was well aligned with Alex Hormozzi's $100 million leads presentation that came out the day that I left. And so I would like listen to that audiobook and just putting some thoughts and stuff together on it.
I don't know how you can listen to that audiobook,
you know,
and
just
not neat. I was listening to it. I was like, oh my God, there's so much information in here. There's no way I could just only listen to it. I need to visually see it.
Yeah. So I had like a notebook with it, so I could like take some notes, and I found myself very regularly just like rewinding it for like 5 to 10 minutes and like and listening to it over and over again. But yeah, no, I have some copies of the hard book, and what I plan to do is the same as what I did with offers, and I'm still doing with offers actually, is like to listen to it and read it and take notes on it and go section by section and plan to put some stuff together. But it's so funny you say that though, because this is one of my biggest sort of pet peeves with like the entrepreneurship space right now, as there's all these people that are just such, I know what do they say? They're mental masturbators, right? Like they're always just like, I need to consume everything. But there was like this whole thing of like, I listened to the ebook like in the first day. I'm like, you didn't get anything out of it if you listen to that book just like 4.5 hours straight.
Unless you're a genius.
Right? There's no way. It's literally impossible, right? But I think that's kind of the problem with a lot of people and why they feel like they consume a lot of good content but don't get anywhere. It's because it like, you know, just goes in one ear and out the other, and you never actually like actively are listening and trying to put
like my goal, like when I read books, which I rarely anymore read books because I freaking hate reading, like unless it's a topic on or something that specifically I want to know or read from a business standpoint. Then I'll read it. And like recently this year I've read a handful of books, but my goal is always to have like a 1-page document, because you will forget immediately what's in that book. I don't know how people remember, like when you're, especially instructional, like with the $100 million leads, that's very instructional. Like that's a textbook that reads like a novel almost, you know what I mean? Like he does a really good job telling the story of things and really lining things up. But it's a freaking textbook. And so if you can put all the ideas pictorially or with bullet points or both or whatever on a 1-page document, I think you can reference that and be like, oh yeah, assuming you're going to actually implement what you've read. Otherwise, why'd you read it?
Yeah. But you know, that's most people though, they don't read it to apply it. They read it to say that they did.
Most people read books.
Or they say that they read 50 books this year.
Yeah, I was going to say, most people read books and they have no reason to read the book. Because they don't, you know what I mean? Like they're preparing to maybe be a business owner or preparing to be in real estate. So they just keep reading books and keep reading books, but none of it actually aligns with anywhere you're at. So the applicability of it is like not there, which is the big part of like reading, like to learn. And then practicing is like the 51% of the reading and learning, right? You have to put it into practice and realize how bad you suck at it, and then adapt that to your style or adapt that to your business or whatever you're doing. That book is applying towards. Otherwise, you're just reading, and like you said, mental masturbation, and there's no use.
Yeah, and also too, the problem is it becomes productive procrastination for people, right? Like they will read these books to hold off from doing the actual hard things on their business. Like I've talked to people that are like, I'm getting ready to start my business, but I need to read Traction first so I know how to run my business the right way. I'm like, it honestly, I've read Traction I guess, once early on in my career, and I was like, okay, I kind of get what they're saying. Didn't put any of it into action. And then we went through a phase earlier this year. We were like, let's try and like do that. And ultimately, we're like, this is just like a lot of freaking work that we don't.
You know what was funny though?
to do right now,
EOS,
but it was very
reading
applicable.
That, like reading Traction, the whole thing. When you actually can use it, it's way harder to do. Like when you read it, like you said,
It's
you read
so
it
much
before
harder.
you could apply it. You're like, oh, I get it. Like, okay, that totally makes sense. But then if you're reading it, knowing how to like plug it into your business, or knowing that you need to plug it into your business, then it's a total. And that's why there's like EOS implementers and all that sort of stuff out there, because it is fascinatingly challenging. And same thing with like reading the Hormozy offers $100 million leads. It's a great book to read. Absolutely hard to implement if you aren't on your toes and actually really trying to like plug this in at the full capacity that he's offering.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest takeaway with all that, right, is it's just so important to take like imperfect action as fast as you can and not be worried about wasting time or losing money, and just understand that that's the price of the education, And I think that there's this whole stigma of like, I don't know if it's like the fear of failure comes from just like our school system where you just like need to be getting A's and things like that all the time. But you kind of have to take your licks in any sort of business. And honestly, if you go through and you hit it out of the park right away, you got super lucky, or I don't even know like why that would happen. But like it's just, besides luck, honestly, because
I don't think you can, because I also strongly believe, like, especially when you're reading or you're learning from somebody else, or even if you're hiring a consultant to come in and help you do something in your business, like it still has to be adapted to you. So using the school grading system, if you were to implement a system or a process or something that you learned and you did it like you said, imperfect action, and you got a D from the traditional scorecard of the school system, that's awesome, because you got that D, and then you have all the other bullshit that you maybe didn't succeed on according to whatever societal norms are, and then the rest of it you just adapt to your business and you adapt to yourself. It's like you can't go in. There's a reason why there's people out there that are like social media influencers, and like, oh, these are the 5 steps I took. And it's like, absolutely, you took those, but that's for you. That's your brand. That's your personality. That's how it works for you. It's not going to work for this for everybody that way. So that you need to take the basics of what they're showing you and talking to you about and adapting it to you. And if you can't do that, then you're just going to come off trying to be like, X influencer or whatever that you're learning from.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why also too, if there's anyone that ever tries to sell you on like you go from, I'm brand new to I'm making my salary in like a month or 30 days or whatever bullshit people's out there, this should be an immediate red flag, because that's not how it works at all. Right. Like ever.
For sure.
But, so cool. So I guess, business wise, I know we had a couple deals that got done while we were gone. I got to wire 160 grand while I was sitting on a catamaran in the Mediterranean for a loan that we put together. Yeah. Which was, I was like, I feel like it's like this baller status right now. But we closed on a property. We had some loans. We had a couple closings.
I'll just dive into that, because like that was one of those things where I was like, I've overcommitted myself dollar-wise to multiple people, because we have a transaction. One of the biggest reasons why is because a friend of ours called and asked if we could do a loan. I was like, absolutely, man. Like, we got the money in the bank, and like, let's do it. And we regularly do that through our lending, our hard money lending business, which regularly that fund taps out, because we just know so many, I would say, good people that we know, like, and trust that we lend to anytime we get an opportunity. But on one of our partners we're doing a double close. And so we had a seller that wanted to use their contract and wanted to use their title company, and they wanted us to be the end buyer, which we are, because through our partnership program, but typically our partners will end up taking title on the property, right? And so we're like, okay, we can make that happen, because they were selling at a good price. They're like, here's the rules. You can buy my house at that price if you follow the rules. So it's like, yeah, okay, cool. Well, because of that, we need to have cash reserves to be able to close on it. And then we're immediately taking the property, the title, and moving it over to our partner's title company and using a PSA to sell it to them immediately. So the same day, it's a double close at 2 title companies. So a lot of risk there. And so we need to have those funds available at least for several days. And so I was like, oh shit, I told Aaron, I was like, yeah, we'll do a loan with you. And then I was like, oh crap, in a week we're going to have to spend that money too. So I double spent it. So I text Mike on Slack. I was like, hey, you got some cash you can, just throw in there? He's like, yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I was able to get figured out. But like, I was like on a boat going like in and out of like service because we were along the Amalfi coast, not Amalfi, whatever the southern coast is of Portugal. Amalfi's in Italy. It was like, every time it would like get in service, I would like refresh my account, like my login. And I was like just trying to get it to like go, and then like it would like fail, and then I was able to get it going.
Yeah, that's funny. That was good. That was actually a kind of fun day because I went out to the house that we had bought a couple weeks ago, and neither of us have walked it or seen it, or we just basically kind of bought it, right? And because we knew it was a good deal, we obviously got pictures. But I went out and walked it, and I was like looking at the neighborhood. I was like, this is nice. Like everybody's grass is green and cut. There's sidewalks that are clean. The house we bought is actually the shittiest one in the neighborhood, which I appreciate. Brand new roof though. Good vinyl siding. All is built in like 2005, so it's like the true traditional. Which isn't the first one we've bought, but I mean the first one I think we've bought to keep as a rental, or a some longer exit. And so yeah, I mean. It obviously needs work, right? But the exterior is pretty tight, and going in on the inside, it just needs your typical carpet paint upgrades. And so I was like, damn, this is badass.
Nice. Well, I mean, that's the old adage, right? You want to buy the worst house in the best neighborhood. And this is definitely that. And so it's the first rental that we've bought this year just because of interest rates and things like that. And the only reason we bought this one is because it was on seller finance. We're buying it at a discount on seller finance with, what are we at, like 5% down, and then we have a 5% interest loan with like a 58-year amortization or something crazy. So our monthly payment's super low compared to what we're going to be able to rent it for. And then our plan is to actually rent it on a lease to own. So we'll be able to get someone to come in, put 10% down. We'll recover all of our down payment. They'll be responsible for the maintenance and everything like that. And then we should have all of our cash out as well as some pretty decent cash flow on a month-to-month basis. So it's basically like a BRRRR method, but using seller financing and a kind of way to play that similar model with the current interest rate situation, which makes it really challenging.
I think I did a Friday Focus. I can't remember which Friday Focus, but it was like 55 or 56 on the deal breakdown of that one, like all the details, and talk about what exits we were going to do with this one. And so we'll keep updating everybody on this, and we'll do another Friday Focus deal deep dive on what the exit. Friday Focus 56.
56.
And we'll explain the whole process to you guys so you kind of get to see. I mean, who knows? Hopefully we make money. We might lose money. You'll have to tune in and watch. Find out.
I mean, I think for us to lose on it, something really bad would have to happen.
I think the only thing that's different that would maybe be different is I'm kind of like, I don't even want to do a lease option. I kind of want to just keep this thing forever. I'm kind of in love with it now.
I mean, like that. That's not our MO though.
I know,
but
you know what I mean. It's like a lease option. I feel like I'm giving away part of it. You know what I mean? I'm like, I kind of want to keep this. Yeah.
Oh, see, I just want to like sell everything right now. I just don't give a
I know.
fuck.
Well, I was like, well, maybe we should sell another single family and then just double down on this place and start buying vinyl villages that we keep on that 5 to 7 time horizon. Because honestly, now's the time to buy those. Or it feels like, I shouldn't say now's the time, it feels like there's opportunity in the vinyl village with interest rates the way they are to pick up some of these, on seller financing and whatnot, or just better terms. And if you can reposition some of the equity out of other properties into those, there probably is a better appreciation curve in the coming 5 years on the newer, better houses.
Yeah, we honestly should look into that. Just like selling off like a lot of our random older single families that we now have such a low return on equity on. I know we talked about this with our episode that actually did super well about our rental properties worth it. But like, we're kind of at that point with so many of ours where our return on equity is so low. And I think you're completely right. Like if we sold a lot of those and we just targeted heavily like seller finance stuff that we could get with like a much lower interest payment, or like a super low down payments, we could probably accumulate a lot more assets. without having to rely on the banks and everything else. And there's definitely opportunity, especially out in Idaho. There's so many people. So like this one, for example, they owned it free and clear because it was somewhere that I think they lived, like 10 years ago when they bought it.
I don't even know what that was because I skip traced them, and they live in a $5 million house literally on the coast, like on a bluff overlooking the ocean in Maine. I'm like, wild.
Really?
Yeah, if you look up, because they had to put their address on all the documents of where we're going to send them, and I looked it up. I was like, that's like baller status. Like I feel like they're maybe connected to some politicians somehow to have. I think he maybe lives like next to Joe Biden or something like that.
Lives next to Joe Biden. Yeah, no way, dude. If he lives next to Joe Biden, he's not owning a house in Idaho.
Right.
Yeah, that's the greatest way to get immediately banned from Idaho forever.
Right.
But there are a lot of people that are like that up there. And the problem is that they've had such huge appreciation with their houses. They don't want to sell them on the market because they will be, giving up a lot of the paper gains they feel like they have. But on seller finance, we're willing to pay a little bit more for it if it has, a little down payment and the house is good quality.
Totally. There's three things I keep coaching people on these types of seller finance deals. You have to have some upside. Are you getting badass cash flow, like sick cash flow, like just you can't say no to the cash flow? Are you getting a ton of equity? Like are you buying the equity, like really good, like $100,000 on a $500,000 property, I would say is pretty good equity, right? That's kind of what we're doing on this one actually. Or are you getting just like sick ass terms, like really good leverage, right? So it's like principal only, by the time the balloon hits, you're going to be able to sell this thing. And because of the spread on the leverage and appreciation over time, you're walking away with great money. So now if you can break even after set asides on cash flow, or you're paying a little bit more because you have a ton of equity and you're sitting on it, like it changes the I guess the terms of the game when you think about traditional investing. So if you look at those three things and you're going to negotiate with a seller on one of those three things, I okay the deal. Like I get a lot of people ask me like, well, what would you do in this situation? I'm like, do you have one of those three things? If not, negotiate one of those to be badass. And then you could be walking away with a great deal. Even if, imagine this, what if you lost $200 a month on a property, but you were getting $100,000 given to you basically?
Or like having massive pay down. I mean, that's what we've done with those little Bowdish properties is we're losing every month on those, but because there's 0% interest, like the debt pay down is, I mean, it's not $100,000, but it's at like 10 grand a year, a little more, 12 grand a year.
Right. Something like that. Yeah.
So even though we're technically losing $200 in cash, like we're still at like a net positive $10,000 a year just because the principal pay down.
The pay down, and then you think about over time the appreciation, and we did buy those with some equity in them as well. So it's like you look at those, you start lining those things up, and it's like I guess I tell people, I'm like, well, say you like had to sit on a property for 3 years and you lost $200 a month, so $2,400 a year. So what is that? $7,200? Is that $7,200? $7,200 over 3 years? Is that my math sound? So $7,200 over 3 years in order to get a check for $100,000 at the end of it. Everybody would make that investment, right? It's like putting your money on black, right? Knowing you're going to get that money.
Yeah, but I mean, that's not saying that you should always just buy for appreciation or debt paid on things like that. Like you all want to have some reserves, but if you're in a position where you have like a healthy cash reserve and it doesn't matter if something weird kind of happens, then you can start to explore that. But if you're someone that's new on your journey, you should absolutely be trying to get as much cash flow as you can early on, because that's what's going to be your insurance policy for when bullshit does happen with the house.
This is the second point of the conversation I always point people to. So you and we have set up our portfolio and look at our portfolio as a way to absorb those losses in order to take bigger risks and take on projects that normally we wouldn't have done when we were earlier in this game because we didn't have the portfolio cash flow to absorb it. So for example, this property that we just bought, we don't even have a plan. I mean, we talked about it on paper, what we're going to do, but we start debt servicing here in a couple weeks. It's $1,800 a month. We're not even like our portfolio will absorb it, and it's allowing us to make the best decision possible for this property instead of jumping right into it and worrying about, we got to get this thing sold, we got to do this, we got to restabilize it. It's okay. Like if we don't want to restabilize it because interest rates are crazy, like we can sit here just on the seller financing and pay $1,800. We don't have to sell it. And the reason why we're able to do that is because we have a portfolio that does absorb these. And will they all be winners? Maybe not, because we're using it to take larger risks. But when you do win, the idea is that you win big.
Exactly. And, you know, I think that's a big reason too that I'm a firm believer. And if you're going to do the rental property game, you should go big or don't do it at all. Honestly, if you're going to try and go like and buy 3 or 4 single family homes, you're going to eventually get yourself into trouble because you're going to have expenses that come up and there's no way your cash flow is going to be that insane. You know, unless you lie about it on Instagram and say that each one makes you $2,000 a month, which I know it's not true. But I rent every closet out at his own bedroom, you know. Going and establishing like a relatively sizable portfolio or balancing out with an active income business is just so important. But, you know, a lot of people like to ignore that and just try to like get to their minimal cash flow as soon as possible and not have an insurance policy. But that's a great way to, you know, feel good for a year or two, but then ultimately have a hard time in a couple of years when stuff does inevitably go wrong.
For sure.
Which, you know, you can never predict. It will happen. Even while I was gone, one of my properties had a flooding situation just because I was out of town. That's what happens.
Is it the same property?
The second you leave town. Yeah, it's the same fucking one, dude. Oh my God. It's like the 4th time. Yeah. And you know the weird thing is, every August that I've owned it, I've owned it for 4 years. Every August there's a water situation, and I don't know why.
We'll have to chat about that, figure that one out.
Yeah, it's really weird. And I've gone and they've checked the pipes. We've checked like the plumbing for the entire house to see if there's like some sort of weird thing that like where it's like backflowing from somewhere or whatever. You know, one point they said it was roots, but then like the people came to clean out the roots and there were no roots. One time they said that there was an issue with like wallow in the pipes, and then the person came to fix it. And they're like, I don't even know what they're talking about. One time it was they were putting tampons down the toilet. This time I don't even know what the situation. Oh, actually no, they said that this time it's because basically underneath the toilet, like it wasn't directly attached to the like the pipe. There was like a gap there, so like it was causing an issue. So we fixed that. Like I don't know. Wow. It's just it doesn't make any sense. I have no idea.
We have a property in our portfolio that's like that, and every like 6 weeks the floor drain in the laundry backs up. And I got a call from like Roto-Rooter, and they're like, I just want to get confirmation that you're okay with this. I was like, yeah, but I'm not paying you. They're like, wait, what? Like, yeah, I'm not paying you. I was like, if you guys go out there, because I know Roto-Rooter is also notoriously expensive, like $500 to do nothing. And so they're like, okay. I was like, yeah, call the tenant, and if they're going to pay for it, you're welcome to go out there. And so they did. They went out there, and the tenant paid for it, because I was like, I don't know what they're doing, but they're doing something to make it. It's the one where we have the state renting from us. So I was like, I don't know what they're doing over there. It's something weird, right? And so I was kind of like,
freaking flushing rubber duckies down the toilet, dude. They do all sorts of dumb stuff.
But it's kind of a similar issue where you're like, I don't know. It's a kind of a mystery. So yeah, that sucks, man.
Anyway,
that is property
part of the game. But at the same time, because I have a decent sized portfolio, I don't really care. It is what it is. You know?
Yeah, so, it's not hurting you every month to do that.
Yep. So cool. But either way, man, I'm glad to be back. I'm super excited to be reconnecting with all of our Instant Investor members. I know we had a lot of stuff going on, and I'm excited to get back to some calls because we have a lot of things to do to start prepping for the next little bit with that. So if you guys haven't heard of our Instant Investor program before, it is our group mastermind where we are starting to get some people that are making some real money in there. So if you are interested in hearing more about what that looks like, basically we give you the entire blueprint to build out a business that's 100% identical to ours, and a community of people that are making, at this point, they're going to be making up as much money as we are.
They're killing it.
And they are killing it. But you can hit me up at Mike_invest on Instagram, and I'd love to chat with you. That's something of interest to you. Anything else before we wrap up here, Dan?
No, man. That's it. I'm good.
No? Easy enough. Cool. Right on, everybody. We appreciate you all listening. If you could share this with anyone who's interested in real estate business or just some good banter, we would appreciate it. It's the easiest way to help grow the show. And besides that, if you go and leave us a 5-star review, I'd really appreciate it. We were on a good streak there of getting 5-star reviews, and then it always comes in ebbs and flows. But that also helps us show up better on the charts. It takes 2 seconds, helps out a ton, and we greatly appreciate it. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you all next week.
See y'all.